Buluvinaka, namaste and good evening to everyone. You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk, and tonight in studio with us is the Permanent Secretary for Local Government and Chair of the Local Government Elections Working Group, Seema Sharma. Thank you, Seema, for coming in this evening to talk to our viewers directly.
Thank you very much, Vijay. Thanks for having me.
On Fiji Village Straight Talk, as I always say, that the show is about accountability and transparency. It's about you bringing in your issues, we asking the question, and also bringing in the people that are in the decision-making process to talk directly to you about the issues that matter to you. So that is the platform that the show is built on right from the beginning. And we also like to thank the people who have sent in their questions. I'll try to ask most of your questions. There have been many questions. There have been a lot of personal questions as well in relation to some personal issues. I have submitted them to Ms. Sharma already, and that will be looked into. But we will go through those questions in our segment as well. Now, Permanent Secretary, what is the plan in relation to the review of the Local Government Act?
Thank you very much, Vijay. In terms of the review of the Local Government Act, the plans thus far is to look at how we could amend certain sections of the Act to make sure that the elections are held in a timely manner, and it is held in a free and fair manner. So the whole idea is to look at specific provisions within the Act that look at elections. There's mainly as part of parts 2 and 3 of the Local Government Act. That is the current plan in terms of how to look at the review. In terms of moving forward in terms of the review of the entire Act, which is obviously due for a very long time, it's an Act dating 1972, what we propose to do is bring in place amendments and work with the elected councillors to come in and work with them to put in place all the other amendments. So currently the process as it is to look at the amendments in relation to the elections.
So the only amendments are related to the local government elections, yes. And you will wait for elected councillors to come into office, work with them, as you've said. A lot of questions had come in regarding that. Thanks for addressing that. Now, from 2008 onwards, we have not had a democratic setup of municipal councils, as the special administrators are appointed to look after the councils instead of councillors elected by the people. What are some of the challenges going forward?
Yeah, you very rightly pointed out, in 2008 there were special administrators. So over the years, it's almost 15 years since councils have had to work with councillors. This whole team of people who provide a lot of policy direction to councils. Keeping in mind that even the group of staff within the councils or the CEOs who are currently there, they've never had to deal with councillors for the past 15 years. We have noted some of these challenges, and what the ministry and especially the working group has sort of come up with, and this is as per the mandate of Cabinet, is to work towards developing a series of policies, guidelines and documentation. So things like working in terms of a code of conduct for councillors, as to how they're going to conduct themselves, and a number of other things, developing financial guidelines, developing HR guidelines, basic operating procedures as to how they conduct themselves. There will be an interesting transition because of the fact that councillors, as I said, are like your policy arm of the council, whilst your CEOs are your operational arm. So it's very much like a setup of a ministry. The minister is the policy head, while the permanent secretary takes responsibility of operations. So these challenges are, things that getting used to the new patterns. And so some of the things we also will be doing is we are already working with development partners like the Commonwealth Local Government Forum to come up with a training plan for the staff, and also an induction plan for the councillors when they come in. Because it's all good to have elections, but how do they move forward and run the institutions? So it's based on past experiences of, when councillors were there, learning from the experiences of special administrators, and how we can make sure that the new group of councillors sort of work within certain ambits.
For many, it's just new territory because the last elections was held in 2005.
Yes, so 18 years ago. It's quite a. I think someone who was probably born in 2005 could vote next year. So.
How can the public participate in the review process? A lot of questions have come in about that. A lot of excitement building that there's another elections coming up next year. And why is it important for public participation?
Thanks, Vijay. Public participation is very important. The setup of local government, as we say, it's more about your little councils and like within the town boundaries. And a lot of people feel closer to your local, they feel that they could make more input in the operations of their councils as per, looking at the national level. So people participation is very important in the process. And we have made sure, the working group from the beginning, ever since we've been appointed around February this year, is to make sure that the voices of the people were heard from the beginning. So the first round of, in fact, consultations that we've done was going to every single municipality and hearing from people what would they like changed, who would they like to see as their candidates, and who should have the right to vote, and a number of other things amongst that we discussed. So now we have, after that process, we've been able to do drafting and look at amendments to the Act. We're taking it around to the people again. We're going to every single municipalities, 13 of them, starting next Monday. We will be presenting what we've done thus far and what are the amendments. We will be asking for their opinions. And this time, to make the process more inclusive, we're having people to fill out online questionnaires, on the basic amendments. What are their opinion on it? We're also having questionnaires available at the face-to-face consultations, where people can have that opportunity to say, yes, I wrote this. This is what I exactly said, rather than just having a verbal exchange of ideas. So we want people to be able to, even if they're not able to attend the consultation face-to-face, they can always get a copy online, or even, we'll make sure there's copies available with the councils to be able to answer those questionnaires and participate in the process.
So where can they see these proposed amendments?
The proposed amendments should be available on our website at least by Friday. We should have it available. So the thing is, the way the law is written, the amendments will be very hard to understand, saying this part is deleted and that part is. We have, one other thing we're also doing is preparing flyers where people will say, in very layman's term, understand what is being amended in the Act. So we're not going to go on these consultations in a very technical term. If you listen to how lawyers speak, they will tell you this section "and" is deleted to be replaced by this word or whatever. But what we're saying is we want you to explain to them what is in the Act right now and what is going to happen. So the amendments, and during the presentations, we will be presenting to people exactly. So we have a 2-hour slot in each town from 5 to 7 p.m. and we'll be presenting in
So
detail.
all in the afternoon, 5 to 7 p.m.?
Yes, we would want as many people to participate, because during the day, people are either at work or looking after their businesses and things like that.
And you're doing massive campaigns in relation to this to ensure you get as many people as possible in those halls?
Yes. So we will be extensively advertising it in the newspapers. We've asked all the councils to have it available at prominent places within their towns and cities. So they'll start putting up this information. We've also asked that they circulate it to their residents, so people are fully aware of the dates and times. But the first publication should come out in the newspapers tomorrow as to the exact times and the venues.
In relation to ensuring that you have a blast of information out there, what are the other options you're looking at based on maybe people may not have access to newspapers?
We're looking at the social media also. I guess a lot of people use social media. The last time we used mobile platforms to get SMS blasts out. We're trying to see if we can able to do that again. But we're using a lot of traditional media. There will be a number of so radio. Your talkback show is quite a good thing to get it launched in, saying, okay, this is. We have done a press conference this morning where we've circulated to every media in terms of the schedules. So we're trying to use as many forms. So, and as we said, we're using the councils to get out the information to their residents.
I have questions sent in, so I'll be asking those questions along the way. There's this question from Filipe Qio. He says, as we are talking about changes to the Local Govt Act and also in relation to elections, can the Permanent Secretary please highlight what is being done in relation to business licenses, as the previous government took away business licenses and there's been a lot of illegal businesses, according to him, throughout Fiji. It's hard for government agencies to monitor illegal business operations, as the issuance of business license gives agencies authority to enter businesses without the issue of license. This becomes harder. What's your comment to Filipe?
Thank you. To explain that process, business licenses has been removed because the Business License Act was actually revoked in 2020. The whole idea was to see how we can streamline and improve businesses doing business in Fiji. And one of the things was seen that a business license was really not the license that allowed any agency to enter any premise. The fact is, the business license was the last thing anyone would get after getting their NFA, OHS, and every other license. So the business license was just a thing for the councils to know this person is operating in there. But the fact, if an agency needed to enter and check whether that person had a valid NFA certification or an OHS, or if they were running a restaurant and did they have a food, health license, there are laws that allow agencies to do that. The Business License Act did not allow them to do that. So there are processes that are underway. Agencies have their own laws and legislations that allow them to take action. And
they should ensure that those laws are followed, and
yes.
The agencies are policing or enforcing?
Yes, the agencies generally should be policing and enforcing. One of the other things that could be, because in any country, in order for a business to be legal, they either do a tax registration. In most, it's tax registration. In Fiji, it was said that you do a tax registration and you register it with the Registrar of Companies, whether it's a company or just a business registration. So that way, a lot of agencies could do a lot of information sharing. They would know exactly in which town and city which business has registered and is operating if they just did a bit of information sharing, gathering from the Registrar of Companies. So they could go into MOUs with the Registrar of Companies and get that information.
I know it's early days and it's something for municipal councils and maybe for a greater discussion to take place. And we know what's hot on the news at the moment. You would know that one of the issues is the setting up of outlets of eBay, which has now become a big issue. It's initial days yet, investigation process underway. But does this also send a red signal out to the municipal councils on outlets within their boundaries?
It probably would be. I'd like to understand how would they say that this business that was set up there was actually doing something illegal. Was the question. So would eBay require to have a registration to be a financial operator, or would they require to get a registration? So that's the thing. In order for Suva City Council, to say that this shop is illegal, they would need to see if they have the relevant licenses for that matter. So they can always go and check if they have the relevant licenses.
And ensure that they are properly operating under the name they are proposing to be operating. Yeah. So something that's an interesting issue that's emerging for Fiji, the new types of scams and other things. Definitely when we'll have these newly appointed councillors coming in, and as you said, they will be looking at policies and all that, some of these issues will come into play. before we go to the break, what is the cabinet decision on the municipal elections?
Thanks, Vijay. So there have been actually three cabinet decisions. 3 times we've actually gone to cabinet. So the first decision was taken by cabinet in January this year, where cabinet said that we are appointing this working group, which is chaired by me and includes the Solicitor General, the Acting Supervisor of Elections, the Permanent Secretary for Finance, and the 13 municipal CEOs. We were mandated by cabinet to go and come up with an action plan as to how we're going to go towards elections. So that was the process we started, and in June, cabinet went through that action plan. And together with that, we presented a comprehensive list of policy and legislative consideration for cabinet to consider. And they then gave us instructions to, okay, go ahead, you can start looking at the amendments of the Act. So just in August, just a few weeks ago, where we were given further instructions, yes, you can go. They noted our process, they've noted the amendments that we are proposing, and they've said, you can go ahead and start. They said, we've noted your process of going into the detailed consultations and coming back to cabinet in around November.
You're watching Fiji Village Street Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. We'll be back after this break.
I've always resorted to drugs because of the work that I do as a coping mechanism.
You said you started sex work and drugs at the same time?
I was 12 years old.
Do you believe, based on the current situation, your salary and allowances should be reviewed and reduced?
Definitely, I think it should be reviewed to reflect what is there in the market.
Is the government of the day promoting nepotism within our community and hatred towards Indo-Fijians?
Thank you very much. The answer is no.
$1 in $3 of our taxes goes towards servicing our debt. So you can't say it's nothing.
There's also the need to do financial inclusion a bit better.
What is your message to the people who may rate you as not good enough for finals rugby?
Success doesn't just happen overnight.
Fiji Village Straight Talk with Vijay Narayan, brought to you by the Ministry of Health and Medical Services.
Watching Fiji Village Street Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Our guest tonight, the Permanent Secretary for Local Government and Chair of the Local Government Elections Working Group, Seema Sharma. And we're talking about the Local Govt Act. We're talking about the local government elections. The last one held in 2005. We were just talking about the cabinet decision that has been made. And question is, you're expected to go back to cabinet in November. What happens after that?
So the process is, once we get back to cabinet, when cabinet approves the amendments, it needs to go to Parliament because it's an amendment to an act. It would mean that we should be able to, not preempting the parliamentary process, but we should be able to go to Parliament around the last sitting for this year. And once Parliament passes the amendments, which means those amendments come into being, and the process towards the elections basically start, the elections office sort of take over, because this elections is going to be run by the Fijian Elections Office as per the Electoral Act. So they basically go into voter awareness, voter registration, and then the relevant processes thereafter towards the elections.
Now we know we've got the Local Govt Act, we've got the Electoral Act, and then we've got the Constitution. Different aspects of elections are in each of those laws. Local Govt Act definitely deals with local government elections, and there's some things that are different because this is a law that has been in existence since 1972. So the voting age, a lot of questions have come up about that, because the voting age in the current act would be 21.
Yes.
What is the proposal going forward?
So in very early in the piece, the decision of Cabinet was that we want to lower this and make it in line with the national elections, to bring it to 18 years. There was this thing about having more the youth, contribute to local government elections and their participation. So obviously there is this proposal to reduce the voter age to 18. In our first round of consultations, it was agreed, by the stakeholders that we met in all the 13 municipalities that, that there should be a reduction of the voting age.
So this is what is expected to go forward as part of the consultations as well?
Yes.
So it's a given that it'll be 18 years proposed, or based on consultations?
It'll be based. See, the thing is, we don't want to say that everything that we're proposing in the draft is cast in stone, because we want to hear what the people have to say. And anything, if needs to be changed, we'll have to go back to Cabinet as a request for policy change.
Can you please explain, we've just touched a bit on local government and Fijian Elections Office. These are the two, the Ministry and the Elections Office have to work together to deliver these elections. So if you can explain what's happening there.
Sure. So as the Ministry of Local Govt, obviously we have certain responsibilities as per the Local Govt Act, and that looks at overseeing and monitoring the municipal councils, and the minister having the responsibility of also providing policy directions. The ministry obviously does not have the role of operations, going into the operations of councils, because you should allow them to operate independently. In this process, because, as I had said earlier, parts 2 and 3 of the Act sort of look at the elections process, and previously in the Act there is a whole set of regulations on elections. But because after that came the Electoral Act, and the Electoral Act allowed the Elections Office to be running these elections. So there had to be some streamlining done of procedures, so we don't duplicate each other's work, and it's a seamless process. So the role of the ministry would be to make sure that we keep the broad principles of the elections in the Act, whilst the procedures and processes in terms of dealing with the election comes under regulations set by the Electoral Commission under the Electoral Act. So we have that role. So the role of the Elections Office would be conducting the elections.
And the time frame for the elections, we know that it's been said today by the minister that it'll be second half of the financial year, or the second half of the year, and is it the second quarter of the financial year, government financial year?
As per Cabinet, it is supposed to be the first quarter of the 2024-25 financial year.
So that's government financial year. There was a lot of confusion today.
Yeah.
So I'm interpreting it as the second half of this year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we expect local government elections to be held in Fiji for the second half of this, from the next year.
Next year.
And that's after the laws are amended and the processes are undertaken. It'll be interesting, after the laws are amended, how much time will the Fijian Elections Office have to carry out proper campaign processes? What's the plan there?
At the moment, we're looking at a good part of early next year where they would be undertaking those processes. But I wouldn't be able to give you the exact timelines because they'll entirely depend on how they map out their processes. But it's looking at early next year when they will go into the awareness
And
because
registration
and
as well?
registration. Registration would be required because we have to register based on wards. They will have to register based on wards. And because it's not a national election, the elections will be held within the gazetted boundaries of the town. So Suva would be the legal Suva city boundaries. Within Suva city boundary, you have 4 wards. That's currently the 4 wards we have, which is the Suva city, Tamavua, Monikau, and Samambula. So the registration would require a person to be a resident of that ward. The proposal is for at least 3 months. So the proposal is to be a resident of, say, Samambula ward for 3 months. So the other requirement will also be that it's being proposed as you need to be registered on the National Register of Voters. So you don't need to get another ID done, but you will need to register. So your National Register would have your residence already on it. So it's a form of verification to say, yes, you were from this area. And there would be other verifications that will sort of leave to the elections office to decide what they're going to do. So it would require a separate registration.
So separate registration required for local government. You have an elections office who will definitely be going out and carrying out that process once things escalate, and that's expected to be first half of next year. And the process is that you have to be a resident of that ward for 3 months to qualify. So if you have a voter card, it doesn't mean that you can just show up and vote.
Yes.
You will not be allowed to vote.
No, if you don't show up on that, because there'll be separate voter rolls, remember, for the wards. So if you don't show up in that voter roll, so that's why we need this the voter awareness period. So they will need a bit of time to carry out this awareness, because people will have exactly the same questions as which ward do I fall in? I live. There'll probably be one street that sort of cuts into 2 wards, So those would be the kind of questions people will have, and we need to start looking towards it. Even probably putting out huge maps in the council offices saying this is how the wards, these are the streets that fall in this ward, and things like that. So it does require a lot of detailed thought around it.
A lot of campaigns and a lot of personal connectivity with the individual voters to know what they will be dealing with. So there's a lot of changes required. Don't expect, and this is our first show on the local government elections. We're making it already clear that you have to go and register for the local government elections, and to ensure that you have that process well thought out. And as things progress, we will continue to give more information regarding that. We've got another question from one of the people who has sent it, is Sandeep Singh. He's asking, why are we only amending election portion of the 1972 Act? Why not innovating with new technology and with modern day setup? The ward system, example, small municipalities don't need to have that many wards. We can abolish that and have a direct number of candidates, while we can, for the bigger wards or bigger constituencies, we can have mayoral elections, and mayors not to be elected by councillors but by the people. And he says the political parties rejected the amendment, so I believe this is a political party representative, and they will soon write to cabinet. The question for you, since you are head of this committee, is why the ward system?
Thanks, Vijay. A lot of people would say the ward system is an old system, but it is quite still applicable in today's day and time. The reason it being a ward system is it allows you to for the people within. So I'm going to use Suva as an example again. Is if I'm living, I live in the Monikau ward, so I would very easily know whoever is representing me in the council. So it makes it easier for me to take my my drainage issue or my garbage issue or anything else to a person and say, look, this is a problem, or I've noticed an illegal development. So I sort of have you're able to take the issues to the granular level of things and say, and then you have the ability to make sure that the resources of the council is spread across the city. It is not just one ward which may have the most number of people living within that area who dominate the discussions or the resources of council. So the whole idea was to make sure that the representation is spread across the towns and cities, and every person at that level is able to raise the issues with people.
Come from within that ward to be raising those issues.
Yep.
Political parties rejecting the idea, you will have consultations with everyone, including the parties?
Exactly.
So have you finished having consultations with the parties?
We haven't, actually. What we've done last week was briefings. What we wanted to do was have a briefing session. We started off with briefing sessions internally with our internal stakeholders, which was our councils, our SAs, Electoral Commission, and internally the relevant agencies. Then we moved on to have briefing sessions with the political parties. It was a briefing session, so we give you a heads up about how we're going to do the process. And then we had a session with the CSOs. Then we had a session with the diplomatic partners, the development partners and the diplomatic corps, the media. So we made sure that we briefed everyone in advance before we started the process next week. So the consultation process is actually going to start next week. And what we've actually requested, the whole idea of this briefing was we wanted to make sure that we're able to get this information out to as many people. So, so CSOs, they could let their groups know as to that. The fact is, please keep an eye out that there will be consultations underway. So the draft act, as I said, draft amendments would definitely be available online and also available to people around Friday. So the consultations haven't finished yet.
Narayan Reddy, the president of Lautoka Residents and Ratepayers Association, is asking who will be allowed to stand for the municipal elections. He is giving a scenario saying previously many people who became councillors were not ratepayers, and he also said they later had taxi permits, carrier permits and minibus permits. What is your comment and what will be done regarding these kinds of issues?
Thanks. So in terms of who can be a councillor, in the current act there is already quite detailed in terms of the qualification and disqualification requirements, but we are already reviewing that, and we're sort of trying to bring it in line with what the Electoral Act says in terms of the qualification and disqualification requirements. So there would be, right now, the disqualification requirement is you can't be a dual citizen. So we're just trying to simplify. The wording used was very, very old wording, just to make it simple, saying you can't be a dual citizen. You at least need to be a resident of that ward for 12 months, a minimum. And there's a number of other qualifications. So first of all, you need to qualify as a voter to be able to qualify as a councillor. So there is a lot of thought being given around that area, but you can't be a public office holder if you want to contest the elections and things like that. So those things are already embedded in the disqualification requirements.
There's a suggestion to have sitting MPs can also contest?
We are currently looking at that in the disqualification requirements, because that would be something that we need to, because we want to make sure that there's a separation between the two, the councils, and so in terms of that, so that is something being considered as part of a disqualification requirement.
So at this point in time, what does the law say?
The law, if I remember it correctly, it talks about, I think it says public office. You can't be a public office holder. Sorry, I can't remember the wordings by heart, but it's something that you can't be a public office holder. So we'll have to go back and see what the definition of a public office holder is.
The issue in relation to the people who are allowed to contest the election, so you're saying they have to be a resident in that ward, and that's the proposal of 12 months?
Yes.
And you will continue to maintain 12 months, or is it expected to change based on consultation?
It could change, but that's the proposal we're making is 12 months.
You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. We'll be back after this break.
Get ready to elevate your event with Total Event Company's top-notch gear hire services. From a stunning 12 by 12 meter adjustable stage and impressive 13 by 13 meter production roof, we've got your event covered. Our gear can fit any venue, big or small. Need tents? We offer 3 by 3 meter pagodas, 6 by 3 meter tents, and a grand 15 by 30 meter marquee tent. Turn your vision into reality. Choose Total Event Company for gear that makes your event shine. Visit the Total Event Company Facebook page or dial 3314766 to get in touch with us.
Welcome back. You're watching Fiji Village Straight Talk. I'm Vijay Narayan. Our guest tonight, Seema Sharma, and she's the Permanent Secretary for Local Government and Chair of the Local Government Elections Working Group. As you've heard earlier, that the local government elections, last held in 2005, is expected to be held in the second half of next year, and all processes are now underway to firstly have consultations on the review of the election portion of the Local Govt Act, and that act came out or was enacted in 1972. Needs changes, so the review, the draft changes will be taken around from next week, starting from Monday, starting from Suva and going on to talking to the people directly in consultations. Following that, there will be those details going back to Cabinet, and then Cabinet taking it on from there, deciding on amendments to the Act to take it to Parliament. And once all of that is done, the Fijian Elections Office goes into gear to start promoting, creating awareness and doing the registration process as required. Now, Seema, just explain to the people the role of elected municipal councils and why is it important to get this process moving?
Sure. As I think I've sort of covered it quite briefly in my earlier responses, is the role of councillors is to provide, the guidance to the councils. They are the decision makers, basically, in terms of looking at the overall looking at the budgets, looking at the investments of the councils, looking at what needs to be done within the municipality and how they strategically plan the way forward for the councils. So their role is very important in terms of taking councils forward or your local governments forward. As I was saying, it could be a little cabinet kind of thing where they come in and make decisions. So it is the most important thing is because they localize a lot of the national vision and the national priorities. So there's a lot of things that you have a national vision that is implemented at the local level. So that it becomes the role of the elected councillors to do. So it's a critical role that they play. So.
Over time, we've noticed that even roadworks, the processes have changed, where some roads were previously under municipal councils have gone under FRA. How would that be changing now? Will that be changing, or that will remain the same?
That is another process, because obviously FRA has been formed by a law, and their responsibilities are sort of defined. And then the vesting of those roads were done under a separate process. So that would be a separate process that we'll have to undertake. But yes, that we'll have to look at things, because every person, every common man knows their council. When anything goes wrong, even if their street light isn't working, the first people they call would be their council. So we have to look at things in sort of like a more holistic manner as we move forward.
That's something for those who have sent their questions. I will not be asking those questions very personal in nature in relation to which agency should be looking after the storm drains and footpaths in your area, but I have submitted those questions to the Permanent Secretary, and she will be looking into those. But I also would encourage you to go to these consultations and make your voices heard in relation to these kinds of issues too, and to ensure that the local government officials take this into account. Now, what is the time frame for the municipal elections in terms of looking at the second half of next year? Is it voting on only one day, counting the same night? How does that happen?
I think I'll leave those processes for the Fijian Elections Office to sort of decide how they would want to, because those are things currently not discussed at this stage. I think we're trying to at least get us over with these. But yeah, those would be some of the things that the Elections Office and the Electoral Commission would sort of be deciding on.
The other issue is about municipal council elections, the turnout, and you normally do not have as many people registered, and we on top of that do not have as many people turning out to vote. Historically, do you have some data to back that up?
As per the historical information we have about the 2005 election, that there was roughly about 30% voter turnout. And as you mentioned, generally, and I think this is sort of a thing that's seen in a number of countries where the voter turnout for local government elections haven't been very good. So what we want to do is, after we go into the process, we want to make sure that there's enough awareness and enough understanding of why people need to be part of the process, why they need to come and vote, and to determine who represents them in the councils. So that will be a whole work that needs to be undertaken with the people, getting them to understand their importance in this whole process.
30% is not a good turnout at all. So if people really care about services in their area, own area where they live, it is important to take part in the process. Voting system, how will the voting system work?
So in the current act, it requires, or the regulations that is there, it requires that, so if in Suva there are a total of 20 councillors, so each council has each ward has 5 councillors. So when someone would go, I don't know if people still remember when they voted in 2005, you'd have to go and cast 5 votes, because you pick 5 people to be a representative. So the first 5 people would make it through. So the top voted would make it through. But the proposal is to change this electoral system to the proportional representation. So what it actually does is allows, that's why we're proposing, is to have the people who go into council are actually showing a better representation of the people who voted them in. So it's a better, more equitable representation of people that have voted them in. So that's being proposed, and the elections office, during the process will be explaining why we are proposing the proportional representation, similar to the national elections.
So the process of voting is expected to be similar to the national elections
So
in
it's
terms
one
of the
person, one
voter
vote.
going to vote, and will it be a number system?
We'll have to look into that too, yeah.
You have talked about the ward system. How many votes, again, the ward system, you were again saying one person, one vote.
Yes.
Irrespective of having the ward system maintained, but one person, one vote. There's a lot of questions about eligibility to vote, and I will ask a few of those questions in relation to that, because at the end of the day, the people who are watching would like to get clarification. Who is eligible to vote, and do they have to register separately? They have asked. You have confirmed that they have to register separately. But who is eligible to vote? The questions have been, will it be only a property owner? Will it be why those who are renting are allowed to vote? If you can explain what's being looked at.
So in the Act, there's a specific section that looks at the voter eligibility, and right now it says 21 years of age, and you've got to be an owner or an occupier of land within the municipality. The proposal is being that we change the words owner and occupier to resident. So you have to be at least 18 years of age. You need to be registered on the national voter register, and you need to be a resident of that ward for at least 3 months. So this is the proposal. Right now it says you have to be an owner and occupier for at least 3 months. The reason being residents is to make it more inclusive. Even when it was owner and occupier, a person who was a tenant could still vote. We cannot eliminate anyone from voting, because that's not what international practices are when it comes to elections. So we want these elections to be as inclusive as possible. So the proposal is 18 years. You got to be a resident for at least 3 months in that ward. You have to be on the national register of voters.
As Permanent Secretary for Local Government, you've talked about the government is looking at a code of conduct for the councillors. We haven't had elections for quite some time, and this raises the issue about how things have been happening all this time. But going forward, a lot of questions also came up about approval processes, how things are being done, etc. So if you can explain for the people in terms of accountability and transparency, how microscopic will that be?
In terms of local government, as I said, the functions of the local government has to be quite independent of the national government, because you have to allow them certain flexibility in terms of their operations. But what we can help do is set up some principles, which is why the code of conduct, having policies, guidelines, and setting some baseline standard operating procedures. I think code of conduct is important for everyone, because you set the parameters. At least, I think there was this question about someone who became a councillor, then they had taxi permits and all these things. So we have to make sure that as a councillor, someone is not taking advantage of his or her position and gaining some benefits out of it. So they would need to understand all their responsibilities. So there will obviously be a lot of auditing and monitoring done as to how so there will be a list of KPIs that should be given to them. So those are the forms of monitoring. So it's kind of like a hands-off thing, but we still keep an eye on you. So we just want to make sure that the operations are happening and you're accountable. You're following all your financial reporting responsibility and your corporate governance responsibilities. because the Act is quite specific about their financial reporting responsibilities. You know, your annual reports, your audited financial statements and things like that. So those would be, we don't want to go to the stage of, you know, we're looking at every single line and things like that.
Your final message to people in relation to consultations is starting from Monday, and of course it starts in Suva, but it won't be held every day in Suva. There are allocated days and times. We cannot go through the whole list on the show, but in relation to people knowing when is their chance to come out and ensure their voices are heard.
Sure. Thanks for that, Vijay. I think the message I have for the people, and I speak on behalf of the working group, is we request you to come out and please make your voice heard. Please contribute to the process. Remember, these elections are for you. These are local governments. It has an impact on your everyday life. As said, the first consultations begins in Suva. It will be at the lower civic center, starting at 5 p.m. We want to keep it in the evening so people are able to come and contribute. If you're not able to come in person, we also have available questionnaires on the ministry website. It'll be available, or the links will be also available on our social media pages, so people can always answer those questionnaires and be a contributor to the process. We would request the youth to come out and please contribute to the process. We want more youth and you know, more inclusivity. So I think that would be my message for people to come out and contribute to the process.
Thank you, Seema, for making yourself available for the show and to talk directly to the people in relation to this new change that is occurring with the municipal council elections and the processes being undertaken, where we also starting with the consultations on the law change before the election proper is held in the second half of next year. That's the show for tonight. Next week we have a show focusing on technology-facilitated gender-based violence. Our guests on the show will be the Online Safety Commission Acting Commissioner Tajeshwari Devi, Fiji Women's Crisis Center Coordinator Shamima Ali, and Home Affairs Ministry's representative, and he's an expert on cybercrime, one of the pioneers of the police cybercrime unit, Savenada Siwatimbao. So until next Wednesday, have a great evening.